So I've taken some foundation across my lids and now I'm using some powder to set this in place, and this will act as a primer for the eyeshadows to come. So this is an important step whether you do this technique or use a standalone primer, because it'll stop your eyeshadows from creasing and smudging, which can happen at the best of times, but particularly in the summer months with humid weather. I'm taking the ABH Riviera Palette today because it has a nice array of bright shades. But what I like is you can create very vivid looks with this palette or add subtle pops of colour to your makeup as well. And the first shade I'm taking is called Sails. This is a matte white and I'm using a C-shaped brush to pat this all the way along the under portion of my brow, and it's going to lift and highlight this area. Now it does look very distinct at first, but when the other shadows are on the eye it's grand. Once I have all the shadow off my brush, then I'm sweeping the shadow down towards the crease to fade it out. Now I'm taking Coastline and I'm using that matte warm peachy shade in the crease as my transition shade. So I'm just using circular motions and little by little I'm taking this across into the crease. Once I've no shadow left on my brush, then I'm moving up a little higher in the crease and I'm just using the bristles now to soften the edge of that shade. And then it's just rinse and repeat. So I'm going back in with a little more of Coastline, starting deep in the crease and using circular motions to distribute that shadow. Now I'm using a smaller brush to smoke that same shadow down along the lower lash line, and I find if I do this with my large fluffy brush it causes me to get a leaky eye. It's like when I'm sweeping the bristles that close to my eye, it just irritates it. So what I do is I use a small dense brush to add some shadow down there, and then I switch to my fluffy blending brush and I blend the edges with that, so obviously then the brush then is positioned further down my eye and away from the lash line so I can soften the edge without irritation. Next then I'm taking Monte Carlo, which is a nice matte warm pink eyeshadow, and as you can see I'm rocking this in the deepest part of my crease. I'm using back and forward sweeping motions to apply that shade, and then once I've applied it across the crease I'm sweeping it down on the outer third of the lid too. Then I'm using that same small bullet shaped brush to apply this shade down along the lower lash line, and I want this shade close enough to the lashes, so I'm using this brush alone and of course making sure it connects up with the shadows above. Next then I'm taking a brown coal pencil and I'm using this to line just above my lash line. Now this doesn't have to be perfect because we will be smudging it out in a minute. Just try and line as best as you can from outer to inner corner. I find as well scribbling the pencil on the back of your hand first to be beneficial because it does warm up the product and then it applies a little bit easier. So now I'm getting smudging. This is actually a lip brush but it's synthetic and it works grand. If you messed up the shape you can use the brush now to pull the pencil into that nice curved shape that complements the lash line, and then once you've done that just run your brush back and forward over the pencil to fade it out. I'm reaching for the shade Palm now, which is a more matte brown, and I'm using an angle brush to add this in a very thin line at first, just at the lash line. So the idea here is the further away from the lash line we get, the lighter the brown should appear, and this will give us a nice gradient effect, which is exactly what you want if you're going for a smoky liner. So once I've applied that brown, I'm going back in with my lip brush, patting over it to fade that eyeshadow. And this technique you can't really mess up with. It's a good one if you're in a hurry and don't have time for bold liner, or if you're a beginner and haven't quite mastered winged liner yet. Next I'm picking up some of the shadow Yacht, which is a nice golden bronze shade, and I'm using a pencil brush to add this just about halfway across the lid, basically where I have that little blank space. Next then I'm picking up a little more of that Palm shade and I'm wriggling this on the outer third of the eye. I'm doing this because I don't want a blunt edge there at the corner of my eye where the brown liner is. Adding some eyeshadow and smoking it into the crease slightly will just add some depth and definition and kind of help just everything flow together nicely. Now I'm using that coal pencil to line my waterline, and then I'm going back in with my angled brush and a little bit more of that brown eyeshadow, and I'm using this to set the pencil in place and to intensify the brown slightly. Then I'll be taking it under the lash line too, just to add a bit of depth like I've done above. To finish things off then, I'm adding some lashes. Now this obviously is optional, but these are natural enough, the Kiss ones I find. They're very easy to apply in my opinion. But once I have those firmly stuck in place, I'm going to take some mascara. This is the Lancome Hypnose one. I just find it's one that doesn't smudge on me. And I'm using that to blend my own lashes in with the false ones. But then that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, please let me know by giving me a thumbs up, commenting and subscribing for more tutorials if you haven't already. And I'll catch you all soon.